The security cameras at St. Mary's Hospital captured something extraordinary at 3:47 a.m. A German Shepherd, with no collar or identification, had somehow entered the building and was moving through the corridors with purpose. What the cameras couldn't capture was that this wasn't just any dog, this was Rex, a retired ambulance dog whose instincts were about to save more lives than anyone thought possible. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital cast a cold, sterile glow across the empty corridors as the night shift settled into its routine. It was Tuesday, October 15th, and the cardiac unit was unusually quiet for a hospital that served over 500,000 people in the metropolitan area. Dr. Sarah Chen had just finished her rounds when the security monitor in the nurse's station caught her attention with something that shouldn't have been there. On camera 7, which monitored the main entrance to the cardiac wing, a large German Shepherd was visible moving through the hallway with deliberate, confident steps. The dog's posture was unlike that of a stray or lost pet. His movements were purposeful, almost professional, as if he belonged in the medical environment despite the obvious impossibility of his presence. "Maria, are you seeing this?" Dr. Chen called to the charge nurse, pointing at the monitor. The dog had stopped outside room 314, where he sat down and remained perfectly still, his attention focused entirely on the closed door. Maria Santos, a veteran nurse with 23 years of experience, leaned over to look at the screen. Her expression shifted from curiosity to concern as she realized the implications of what they were witnessing. How did a dog get past security? And why is he just sitting there like he's waiting for something? Inside room 314, paramedic Jack Morrison lay unconscious, connected to a web of monitors that tracked every aspect of his cardiovascular system. At 42 years old, Jack had dedicated his entire adult life to emergency medical services, responding to over 8,000 calls during his career. His sudden cardiac arrest earlier that evening had shocked everyone who knew him. Jack was physically fit, had no known heart conditions, and had always seemed invincible to his colleagues. What the hospital staff didn't know was that the dog in their corridor wasn't a random intruder. Rex had been Jack's partner for 8 years, serving as one of the most successful ambulance dogs in the city's emergency medical system. Together, they had saved hundreds of lives, with Rex's extraordinary ability to detect medical emergencies, often making the difference between life and death for patients in critical situations. Rex's training was extensive and specialized. He could detect the sign of diabetic ketoacidosis before blood sugar monitors registered dangerous levels, identify the early signs of stroke through subtle changes in human behavior, and sense cardiac events through imperceptible alterations in heart rhythm and breathing patterns. His success rate was so remarkable that other emergency services had tried unsuccessfully to replicate his training program. But Rex had been forcibly retired 6 months earlier, after a bureaucratic review determined that using animals in emergency medical services posed liability issues for the city. The decision had devastated both Jack and Rex, severing a partnership that had become legendary among first responders. Jack had taken Rex home as his personal pet, but the dog had never adjusted to civilian life, spending his days restlessly pacing and clearly missing the purpose that had defined his existence. Now, somehow, Rex had found his way back to what he did best. The hospital's security system showed that he had entered through an emergency exit that had been propped open by maintenance workers earlier in the evening. Rex's familiarity with medical facilities had allowed him to navigate the complex layout with ease, following scent trails and subtle environmental cues that guided him directly to Jack's location. Dr. Chen made the decision to investigate personally rather than call security immediately. As the hospital's lead cardiac specialist, she was curious about the dog's behavior and wanted to assess whether his presence posed any actual threat to patients or staff. She approached room 314 cautiously, her medical training making her wary of unpredictable animals in a sterile environment. When she reached the corridor where Rex was stationed, Dr. Chen was struck by the dog's remarkable composure. He acknowledged her presence with a brief glance but didn't move from his position. Outside Jack's room, his breathing was calm and steady, his posture alert but not aggressive. Most significantly, his behavior showed none of the anxiety or confusion typical of lost pets in unfamiliar environments. "Easy, boy," Dr. Chen said softly, extending her hand for Rex to sniff. The dog's response was immediate and telling he briefly made contact with her hand, then returned his attention to the door, as if acknowledging her but indicating that his priority lay elsewhere. It was then that Rex's behavior changed dramatically. His ears perked forward, his body tensed with alert attention, and he let out a single, sharp bark that echoed through the quiet corridor. Dr. Chen froze, recognizing that the dog was exhibiting the same focused intensity she had seen in medical alert animals during her residency training. Rex stood up and moved away from Jack's room, padding silently down the corridor toward the intensive care unit. His movement was purposeful and direct, as if he were following a trail invisible to human senses. Dr. Chen followed at a distance, her curiosity now mixed with growing concern about what the dog might have detected. In room 322, elderly patient Margaret Foster was sleeping peacefully under sedation following her hip replacement surgery. Earlier that day, the 78-year-old retired teacher had undergone the procedure without complications, and her vital signs had been stable throughout the evening. But as Rex approached her door, his behavior indicated that something was seriously wrong. The dog sat down outside Margaret's room and began the same alert behavior he had displayed at Jack's door. But this time, his signals were more urgent, a series of short, controlled barks that seemed designed to attract attention without causing general alarm. Dr. Chen realized that Rex was demonstrating the trained behavior of a medical alert animal, something she had read about but never witnessed firsthand. Against her better judgment but driven by professional curiosity, Dr. Chen entered Margaret's room to check on the patient. Margaret appeared to be resting comfortably, her breathing even and her color normal, but when Dr. Chen checked the monitors more carefully, she noticed subtle irregularities in Margaret's heart rhythm. That hadn't triggered the automatic alarms but suggested the early stages of post-operative cardiac complications. Nurse Sandoz, I need you in room 322 immediately, Dr. Chen called over the intercom. And bring the crash cart as a precaution, as Maria hurried to assist. Dr. Chen found herself staring at Rex, who had remained positioned outside the room, as if standing guard. The dog's ability to detect Margaret's developing cardiac emergency before the hospital's sophisticated monitoring equipment registered any problems was both impossible and undeniable. How did you know? Dr. Chen whispered to Rex, but the dog was already moving again, his attention drawn to something else in the hospital that required his intervention. Rex's next stop was the pediatric wing, where 8-year-old Tommy Williams was recovering from complications related to his chronic asthma. The boy had been admitted 3 days earlier with severe respiratory distress, and while this condition had stabilized, he remained under close observation due to the unpredictable nature of his illness. When Rex positioned himself outside Tommy's room, Dr. Chen didn't hesitate to investigate inside. She found Tommy sleeping restlessly, his breathing slightly labored but within acceptable parameters according to his monitors. However, when she examined him more closely, she detected the early signs of respiratory distress that could rapidly escalate into a life-threatening asthma attack. I need respiratory therapy to room 318 stat. Dr. Chen announced over the hospital's communication system, patient showing early signs of respiratory compromise. The respiratory therapist who responded was Jennifer Walsh, a 15-year veteran who had seen every possible complication of pediatric asthma. When she arrived and assessed Tommy's condition, her expression confirmed Dr. Chen's concerns. He's heading into severe bronchospasm, Jennifer said quietly, preparing the nebulizer treatment that would prevent Tommy's airways from closing completely. Another 30 minutes, and we would have been looking at full respiratory failure. How did you catch this so early? Dr. Chen glanced toward the corridor where Rex had been waiting, but the dog was gone again. Moving deeper into the hospital on another mission that only he understood, she realized that Rex wasn't just detecting isolated medical emergencies. He was conducting a systematic sweep of the entire facility, using sensors far more sophisticated than any technology the hospital possessed. Rex's fourth stop was the emergency department, where the overnight staff was dealing with the usual collection of injuries, illnesses, and crises that filled urban hospitals after midnight. But Rex's attention was focused on a specific patient who appeared stable and hadn't triggered any particular concern from the medical staff. 19-year-old college student David Park had been brought in 2 hours earlier after a motorcycle accident. His injuries appeared minor, some road rash, a possible concussion, and various bruises, but he had been kept for observation due to protocols surrounding head trauma. David was conscious, alert, and complaining mainly of a headache. That seemed consistent with his accident. Rex's behavior outside David's examination room was different from his previous alerts. Instead of sitting and barking, he began pacing in tight circles, whining softly, and showing signs of agitation that suggested extreme urgency. When Dr. Chen arrived to investigate, she found David sitting up in bed, chatting with his girlfriend, who had come to pick him up. How are you feeling, David? Dr. Chen asked, conducting what seemed like a routine check. Much better, actually, David replied. The headache's almost gone and I just want to get out of here. I have a midterm exam tomorrow. But as Dr. Chen examined David more carefully, Rex's agitated behavior made her look for subtle signs that might have been overlooked. During the initial assessment, she noticed that David's pupils were slightly unequal in size, a finding that could indicate increased pressure inside his skull. When she tested his reflexes, she found minor inconsistencies that suggested possible brain trauma. David, I want to run one more CT scan before we discharge you, Dr. Chen said, trying to keep her voice calm and reassuring. It's probably nothing, but I'd rather be safe. The CT scan revealed what Rex had somehow detected, a small but growing brain hemorrhage that would have proven fatal if David had been discharged without treatment. The bleeding was so minimal that it hadn't caused obvious symptoms, but Rex's extraordinary senses had identified the chemical and physiological changes that preceded catastrophic brain injury. As the emergency team prepared David for immediate neurosurgery, Dr. Chen stood in the corridor, staring at Rex with a mixture of amazement and disbelief. In less than 2 hours, this remarkable dog had identified 4 separate medical emergencies that could have resulted in multiple deaths if left undetected. But Rex wasn't finished. His final destination was the maternity ward, where new mothers and their babies were monitored during the critical first days of life. The dog's behavior as he approached this section of the hospital was notably different, gentler, more cautious, as if he understood that this area required special consideration. Rex stopped outside the room of Lisa Chen, a 26-year-old new mother who had given birth to her first child 36 hours earlier. Both mother and baby appeared healthy, with no complications during delivery and normal recovery progress. But Rex's alert at their door prompted Dr. Chen to conduct an examination that revealed early signs of postpartum preeclampsia. a potentially fatal condition that can develop after childbirth. Lisa's blood pressure was elevated just enough to be concerning, and blood tests confirmed that she was developing the protein spillage that characterizes preeclampsia. Without immediate treatment, Lisa could have suffered seizures, stroke, or organ failure within hours. How is this possible? Dr. Chen asked herself as she watched Rex settle down in the corridor, his systematic sweep of the hospital apparently complete. How can one dog detect so many different types of medical emergencies? The answer lay in Rex's extraordinary training and his 8 years of experience working alongside Jack Morrison. Rex had been exposed to thousands of medical situations, developing an almost supernatural ability to detect a subtle scent and behavioral changes that preceded medical crises. His nose was capable of identifying chemical markers that human instruments couldn't measure, and his observation skills allowed him to notice behavioral patterns that even experienced medical professionals might miss. As dawn approached and the night shift prepared to hand over to the day team, Dr. Chen realized that Rex had accomplished something unprecedented in medical history. Working alone, using only his natural abilities and professional training, he had prevented multiple deaths in a single night. Each of his alerts had been accurate, each intervention had been necessary, and each life saved represented someone's family member who would go home healthy instead of becoming a tragedy. But Rex's most important mission was still incomplete. Throughout the night, he had periodically returned to room 314 to check on Jack, his original partner, and the reason for his unauthorized visit to the hospital. Jack's condition had been stable but critical, with doctors uncertain about his prospects for recovery. As Dr. Chen reviewed Jack's medical records, she discovered the full extent of his partnership with Rex. The documentation showed that Jack and Rex had achieved the highest success rate of any emergency medical team in the city's history. Their ability to arrive at emergency scenes and immediately identify the most critical patients had saved countless lives and earned them recognition from medical professionals throughout the region. The records also revealed that Jack's forced retirement of Rex had been devastating for both partners. Jack had repeatedly requested permission to continue working with Rex, arguing that the dog's abilities made him an invaluable medical resource. But bureaucratic concerns about liability and protocol had overruled medical necessity, separating a team that had proven its worth through 8 years of exemplary service. Now, as Jack lay unconscious, fighting for his own life, Rex had somehow found the strength and determination to continue their mission alone. The dog's actions throughout the night represented not just remarkable medical detection abilities, but also a demonstration of loyalty and dedication that transcended the boundaries between human and animal partnership. When Jack finally regained consciousness late the next morning, the first thing he saw was Rex lying quietly beside his bed. Hospital regulations strictly prohibited animals in patient rooms, but Dr. Chen had made an executive decision that Rex had earned the right to be present for his partner's recovery. "Hey, boy," Jack whispered weakly, reaching out to touch Rex's head. "What are you doing here?" Rex's response was immediate and touching. The dog moved closer to Jack's bedside, resting his head gently on his partner's arm while his tail wagged slowly, but Rex's eyes remained alert, still scanning the room and monitoring Jack's condition with the professional attention that had defined their partnership. Dr. Chen entered the room carrying a thick folder of documentation from the previous night's events. "Jack, I need to tell you about what your partner did while you were unconscious." Rex single-handedly identified and helped treat 5 separate medical emergencies in this hospital. He saved 5 lives in one night, working entirely on his own. Jack's eyes widened as Dr. Chen recounted the details of Rex's remarkable night. Margaret Foster's cardiac complications, Tommy Williams' respiratory crisis, David Park's brain hemorrhage, Lisa Chen's preeclampsia, and the systematic way Rex had conducted his medical sweep of the entire hospital. "That's my boy," Jack said, proudly, scratching behind Rex's ears. He always knew when someone needed help. It was like he could sense things that the rest of us couldn't see. Dr. Chen leaned forward, her expression serious but hopeful. "Jack, I've been thinking about what happened last night and I wanted to propose something. This hospital has never had a medical detection dog program, but after witnessing Rex's abilities firsthand, I think we need to change that." The proposal that Dr. Chen presented to the hospital administration was unprecedented. She recommended that St. Mary's Hospital establish the first medical detection dog program in the state, with Rex serving as the pilot program's lead animal. The documentation from his unauthorized night shift provided compelling evidence of the potential benefits such a program could offer. The hospital's board of directors was initially skeptical, citing concerns about hygiene, patient reactions, and liability issues. But Dr. Chen's presentation included detailed medical records, showing that Rex's interventions had prevented multiple deaths and potentially saved the hospital millions of dollars in malpractice claims and emergency interventions. More importantly, Rex's actions had demonstrated that medical detection dogs could serve as an early warning system for conditions that human monitoring might miss. His ability to detect subtle chemical and behavioral changes could complement existing medical technology, providing an additional layer of safety for patients in critical situations. The pilot program was approved on a 6-month trial basis, with Rex and Jack working together as the hospital's first medical detection team. Their responsibilities would include conducting rounds in high-risk units, providing early detection of medical emergencies, and serving as a model for training other human-animal medical teams. Rex's return to active duty was celebrated throughout the hospital. Nurses who had witnessed his remarkable night shift spoke of him with reverence, and patients who had benefited from his interventions requested to meet the dog, who had saved their lives. Tommy Williams, the young asthma patient, became particularly attached to Rex, insisting that the dog visit him every day during his recovery. But for Jack, Rex's most important accomplishment wasn't the lives he had saved or the recognition he had earned. It was the demonstration that their partnership had never truly ended, even when bureaucracy and regulation had tried to separate them. Rex's unauthorized hospital visit had proven that some bonds transcend official procedures, and that dedication to helping others doesn't recognize administrative boundaries. 6 months later, the pilot program had exceeded every expectation. Rex had identified over 30 medical emergencies during his hospital rounds, with a 100% accuracy rate in his alerts. Other hospitals had begun requesting information about establishing their own medical detection dog programs, and medical schools were incorporating Rex's story into their curricula. As an example of innovative patient care, the program had also inspired policy changes at the state level, with legislators introducing bills to authorize and regulate the use of medical detection animals in healthcare facilities. Rex had become not just a local hero, but a catalyst for nationwide recognition of the potential benefits of human-animal partnerships in medical settings. As Jack and Rex conducted their daily rounds at St. Mary's Hospital, their partnership had evolved beyond its emergency medical services origins into something even more meaningful. They were no longer just responding to crises, they were preventing them, using Rex's extraordinary abilities to identify problems before they became life-threatening emergencies. The bond between them had deepened through their shared experience of separation and reunion. Jack had learned to appreciate Rex not just as a working partner, but as a friend whose loyalty had literally saved his life. Rex, for his part, had proven that his dedication to helping others extended beyond formal training into something that could only be described as a calling. Their story had become legendary among first responders and medical professionals, a reminder that sometimes the most effective medical interventions come from the most unexpected sources. Rex's night of unauthorized hospital rounds had demonstrated that healing doesn't always require advanced degrees or sophisticated equipment. Sometimes it just requires the courage to act when action is needed. As they completed another successful day of preventing medical emergencies and bringing comfort to patients throughout the hospital, Jack reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. A bureaucratic decision that had seemed like the end of their partnership had ultimately led to a new beginning that was even more meaningful than their original work together. Rex, walking proudly beside his partner through the hospital corridors, carried himself with the quiet dignity of an animal who had found his true purpose. He had proven that loyalty, dedication, and the instinct to help others could overcome any obstacle, including the rules and regulations that sometimes prioritize procedure over compassion. Their story was far from over. Each day brought new opportunities to save lives, comfort patients, and demonstrate that the bond between humans and animals could achieve extraordinary things when channeled toward helping others. Rex had shown that heroism comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most important medical breakthroughs happen not in laboratories or operating rooms, but in the quiet moments when one living being refuses to give up on another. This incredible story reminds us that dedication to helping others knows no boundaries, not bureaucratic rules, not species differences, and not even hospital regulations. Rex proved that true medical instinct and compassion can't be retired by paperwork or replaced by technology. Sometimes the most advanced medical detection system is a loyal heart that refuses to stop caring. Rex's unauthorized night shift became a testament to the power of partnership and the extraordinary things that can happen when we trust in the bonds that connect us. What other incredible stories of animal heroes and unbreakable partnerships are waiting to be discovered? Subscribe for more emotional tales that will restore your faith in the healing power of loyalty and love.